Respectful Interactions, Disability Language and Etiquette was produced by the Northwest ADA Center at the University of Washington. This movie, People Who Use Service Animals, is Module 7 in the series Disability Language and Etiquette. The Northwest ADA Center is a member of the ADA National Network. These materials were developed under grant number H133A110015. However, the contents do not necessarily represent the policy of the Department of Education, and you should not assume endorsement by the federal government. Under the Americans with Disabilities Act, businesses, organizations, and state and local government agencies that serve the public must allow people with disabilities to bring their service animals into all areas of a facility where the public is normally allowed to go. The ADA defines a service animal as any dog that is individually trained to do work or perform tasks for the benefit of an individual with a disability. There is no restriction on the type of disability a person must have to benefit from a service animal. The disability could be physical, sensory, psychiatric, intellectual, or other mental disability. It is the basic intent of the ADA to allow service animals the broadest feasible access to businesses and state and local government entities. It is important to avoid unnecessarily separating service animals from their owners. Who is entitled to use a service animal? The ADA authorizes the use of service animals for the benefit of individuals who meet the ADA definition of disability. The ADA does not limit the type of disability one must have in order to use a service animal. There are many examples of the tasks or work that service animals may be trained to do. Some examples are guiding people who are blind or have low vision. Service animals may also alert a person who has low vision to the presence of another person nearby, for example, for privacy when using the ATM machine. Service animals may also alert individuals who are deaf or hard of hearing to sounds or intruders. For people with physical disabilities, service animals may be trained to pull wheelchairs or fetch dropped items. They may also alert a person with autism of distracting behaviors, for example, hand flapping. Amy describes what Tux, her service dog, has been trained to do for her.
I have cerebral palsy and autism spectrum disorder and a few other mental health related disabilities, a few other physical related disabilities. So for me, he does mobility assistance, sound response, and medical alert medical response. What that means is he helps me walk and keep my balance because of his cerebral palsy. He's got a harness, and I hang on to the harness, and he's tall enough when he stands up that I can lean against him, and I can also get power off of him when we're walking, so my muscles are not as fatigued as my muscles would be alone.
Service dogs may also be trained to alert a person to the onset of a seizure, and if a person has a seizure, to stand guard or to go for help. For people with some types of mobility disabilities, animals may be trained to provide physical support or balance. For people with diabetes, animals can be trained to alert the handler of low blood glucose levels and or notify others if a person loses consciousness. Service animals may also be trained to assist people with mental health disabilities to take their medicine, or for persons with PTSD, providing safety checks, room searches, or turning on lights. Service animals may also be trained to interrupt adverse or self-injurious behaviors and keep people who are disoriented from danger. Are service animals pets? It's important to note that service animals are not pets. They are trained working animals. No pets policies do not apply to service animals. Patricia explains how important her dog is to her and that he is not a pet.
I guess the biggest message I would like to get across is that, these dogs make it possible for us to live normal lives like anybody else. It's thanks to my dog that I can cross streets safely, travel to and from my job every day, and take care of my family and do what I need to do. And they're not just pets. You know, I mean, I've had people just enviously, say to me as I was going into a store, I wish I could take my dog in here.
How do you know if a dog is a service animal? Ask. To determine if an animal is a service animal, as defined in the ADA, there are two questions that one may ask the handler. The first question: is the dog a service animal required because of a disability? The second question: what work or task has the dog been trained to perform? It's important to note that these questions may not be asked when it is readily apparent that the animal is trained to do work or perform tasks for a person with a disability. For example, you may not ask the person who is apparently blind if their dog in harness is a service animal. You may also not ask the handler, "What is your disability?" and "Where is the animal's certification?" Patricia and Amy explain what these questions mean to them.
A business can ask you if it's a service animal and what tasks are the service animal trained to do. So they cannot ask about the person, they can only ask about the dog.
Basically, the two legal questions, is that a service dog? And what has that service dog been trained to do to help you in terms of work or task with your disability? And, so I respond, and I carefully wrote up my response to not reveal my disability because I don't need to, and it's none of anyone's business.
A person with a disability using a service animal is not required to carry proof or other documentation indicating that the animal is a service animal or what training the animal has received. Some animals may wear harnesses, vests, or have special colors or tags which may indicate that they are trained service animals, but such indication is not necessarily definitive proof. Nor is a letter from a health professional indicating that the animal is a service animal, as this type of documentation may have been required to possess a service or assistance animal in a housing situation. Patricia and Kim discussed their feelings about fake service dogs. Amy also has something to say about this topic.
Kim and I were discussing a little while ago that one of the issues that were coming in, what we are seeing more of, rather than the stores declining our service, is those people taking advantage of the Americans with Disabilities Act and bringing their pet dogs in, and those animals interfering with our dogs.
But I will do absolutely nothing to condone someone getting a vest or a harness that would enable them to pretend to have the same access rights as my dog does.
Well, I work in an independent living center, and I get many of those same calls. I get people asking me if I would write them a note, saying that their dog is a service animal. I won't, and if your dog truly is a service animal, you don't need that anyway. But and I do a lot of explaining that the dog must be trained to perform a task to assist with their disability. That they just can't take it and take their pet out there into the public.
One of my deepest problems and worst problems is with people who fake their pet dogs as service dogs. And when that happens, that really damages the image of service dogs overall. And I have to work extra hard to make the image of Tux and I a professional one. And some establishments have had their businesses either, destroyed somehow. Maybe the dog's eaten the curtains or was running amok in the hallways unsupervised. Maybe they were throwing tennis balls up and down the hallways of a school when they were in class. These are real stories that I've heard. And as a consequence, when Tux and I arrive, they don't want to allow us in. And so we have to stand there and we have to explain to them why the law is the law. The fact that Tux and I are very well trained.
When asked what task an animal has been trained to perform, some people may indicate that their animal provides emotional support or comfort. Comfort and emotional support do not require training, and therefore the animal is not a service animal. Similar benefits that a dog might provide, which do not require training, include therapy, companionship, therapeutic benefit, and affection. Service animals must be under the control of the handler and in harness or on leash or other tether. There may be exceptions to this rule when the handler is unable because of a disability to use a harness, leash, or other tether, or the use of a harness, leash, or other tether would interfere with the service animal's performance of work or tasks, in which case the service animal must be otherwise under the handler's control by using voice control, signals, or other means. Service animals may be trained to provide minimal, nonviolent protection for the handler. For example, rescue work, such as standing guard for a person who has had a seizure, panic attack, or fear provoked by PTSD. However, a dog may not be trained to be an attack dog. The ADA does not limit the breed of dog that can be trained to be a service animal, although there may be local laws banning some breeds. Patricia describes a personal incident concerning breeds.
The local guide dogs program here uses Labrador Retrievers. So I've been told by one business owner that this couldn't possibly be a guide dog because it's not a Labrador Retriever. And I explained, well, no, other breeds, are also guide dogs.
Other customers may ask that a service animal be removed because they have allergies or extreme fear of dogs. Allergies and fear of dogs are not valid reasons for denying access or refusing service to people using service animals. When a person who is allergic to dog dander and a person who uses a service animal must spend time in the same room or facility, they both should be accommodated by assigning them, if possible, to different locations within the room or different rooms in the facility. Allegations of safety risk must be based on actual risks rather than on mere speculation, stereotypes, or generalizations. Amy tells what to do if you're afraid of her service animal.
One thing that I would like to say, if you're in a public place and you're afraid of dogs, then please let me know calmly and rationally. If you see a dog in a public space, it's probably a service dog. A lot of us have medical conditions that if somebody starts screaming, it would be, it makes us think, oh my gosh, what's going on? Do I need to be worried? And our anxiety levels go up. And the dog, some dogs are very sensitive to noise around them.
Controlling the service animal. Service animals must be under the handler's control at all times. If an animal is out of control and the handler does not take effective action to control it, the service animal may be properly excluded from the facility. It is important to note that you may not exclude the handler, but only ask that the service animal be removed. The ADA also requires service animals to be housebroken. Amy's service dog has been trained to make noise to alert her.
One of the things about Tux is that he is medical alert, medical response, and that means that he makes a little bit of noise sometimes, and oftentimes that noise or that paw on my lap or that desperate thing that looks like misbehavior isn't really misbehavior. It's a message to me.
Amy discusses a business owner's rights if an animal is not behaving appropriately.
It's really about the training of the animal, and I think, businesses have recourses if an animal is not behaving appropriately. And I really encourage the businesses to contact your regional ADA center. In the Pacific Northwest, ours is the Northwest ADA Center up at University of Washington, and make sure that you know what you can and what you can't ask, and what your recourses are, so that you know your rights and that you can, that you don't have to tolerate that.
Caring for the service animal. Public accommodations, businesses, or government entities are not required to supervise or care for a service animal. It is the responsibility of the handler to provide care for and to supervise their service animal. Even though a business or government entity is not required to supervise or care for service animals, there may be instances where assistance with care may be needed. For example, in certain emergency situations, incarceration of the handler, or in some other situations where medical care is being provided. Healthcare settings. Could the presence of a service animal pose a significant health risk in certain areas within a healthcare facility? The determination of such risk should be based on a decision made by appropriate medical personnel who, upon finding such a risk, should list specific areas where exclusion is appropriate, for example, the intensive care unit, and permit the service animal in all other areas. In the guidance provided by the U.S. Department of Justice, it is indicated that a healthcare facility must also permit a person with a disability to be accompanied by a service animal in all areas of the facility in which that person would otherwise be allowed. There are some exceptions, however. The Department allows the guidance of the Centers for Disease Control and Prevention, the CDC, on the use of service animals in a hospital setting. Consistent with CDC guidance, it is generally appropriate to exclude a service animal from limited access areas that employ general infection control measures such as operating rooms and burn units. A service animal may accompany its handler to such areas as admissions and discharge offices, the emergency room, inpatient and outpatient rooms, examining and diagnostic rooms, clinics, rehabilitation therapy areas, the cafeteria and vending areas, the pharmacy, restrooms, and all other areas of the facility where health care personnel, patients, and visitors are permitted without taking added precautions. Emergency preparedness. Because persons with disabilities who use service animals rely on the assistance of their animals to perform major life functions, service animals are a critical component of an emergency preparedness plan for users of service animals. Service dog etiquette. In addition, other guidelines for interacting with an individual with a disability and his or her service animal include: do not touch the service animal without the handler's permission. Do not distract the service animal with loud noises. Do not offer food to the service animal. Amy discusses the importance of not distracting a service dog.
People do bizarre things. As a general rule, service animals should not be petted because it distracts them from their focus of the work. And anything like food, hooting noises, that all counts as distractions also. You don't actually have to touch him to distract him. You can make hooting noises, or you can make any other strange noises, or you can reach for him or something like that, and it makes him worried. He goes, what's that?
Kim and Patricia discuss their feelings about other people petting their service dogs.
Well, a lot of it depends on what I'm doing or where I am, and sometimes the personality of the particular dog. In his case, he's really good about letting people pet him, so he doesn't get real excited or anything. So if I'm just at work and I'm not real busy, I'll let people pet him. But if I'm trying to cross the street, then it's no, I'm sorry, I can't stop now, he's working.
I've had people chase me in the middle of crosswalks and ask if they could pet my dog. And I'm like, can I get to the other side of the street first?
Yeah.
And children are wonderful. I have no problem. If the child asks, I'll say, let me put my dog in a sit first, and I take that opportunity to educate the child about what a service animal does. And they're usually so proud, and they run off and go tell their parents.